right, guys, I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at some end of cycle price targets, price projections for Bitcoin and for the S&P 500. Remember, we cover everything here on the channel because that's part of our investment plans, and our investment strategy is to understand traditional finance and overlay that with Bitcoin and, of course, the major one, the real estate cycle. Now, there are some ground rules we must cover, as we all know that price projections are a bit of bull porn. People get very obsessed with end of cycle targets, and it's kind of doesn't go hand in hand when people expect an exact price or date to happen. Yet we all know at the back of our minds that no one knows the future. You cannot predict 100% accuracy what is going to happen on the right-hand side of this chart. But what we can do is put some probabilities into our favor, have rules and signals in mind to help us get out in case things change, because there's always going to be an invalidation of potential price or time targets. And so if you are prepared with your own strategies, with your plans, and maybe you've been following some particular rules that I use here on the channel, then that would hopefully set you up for a better result come the end of the cycle, whenever that may be. So if that interests you, hit the subscribe button, because this will inevitably change. I don't have the crystal ball to the right-hand side. I just try to stack the probabilities in my favor and ride the move as long as possible. Let's go. The underlying theory of our investment principle is the 18.6-year cycle, and this is essentially the stage that we are running into now. It's called the winner's curse phase. We're roughly around here now. This changes every few months or so, because at the end of the day, this is a 14-year up and a 4-year down. Roughly speaking, when we go back over 200 years of data for this cycle, it has worked every single time. So this is the stage we're going into, and it's the final stage before we collapse. So there still seems to be a fair bit of time left to get those gains to the upside, for the S&P 500 and for BTC. Now, I want to look at this in stages, first targets and then some end targets, knowing that the end targets will have to change. They have to change as more of the data comes in. I've said that, I really want to stress it, because I don't want people to take this away and then say that's it and get lazy. Move on to the S&P 500. So I'm just going to make this as simple as possible, looking at particular fibs here and particular levels to the upside. So basically our 1.618, and then I'm going to look at the extension as well. So the extension is something that I use for my trading. It's Gann style analysis, and that allows us to take ranges that the market has produced and then project them off lows off the corrections that the market has also produced. So pretty simple in theory. To use them, you just have to make sure you're using the most relevant highs and lows for the time period that you want to identify for the next particular move. Of course, there's no 100%. I think I need to keep saying that just so people understand. But here is the first one. So to see whether it is working, I like to see it hit those prices already. So, and what I mean by that is you've got this particular range here out of the October bear market low. So this top projected off the next one, the October 2023 low. And you can see we had a 100% hit at in March of 2024. So it seems like this particular extension is working for now. It broke past 50%. So they're the two key levels that I'm looking at here. And then I look further up to the next particular resistance. So about 5,800 points, and then about 6,400 points if I'm getting a doubling of this range. Now things are speeding up. There's so much more I can get into, but of course this video would end up being an hour long, and I don't want to go down that path, as I so often get very close to doing that. So anyway, that's our first one here, just looking at that. That seems to be working okay for now. You've got an extension, the pullback, that's where we're projecting the next 100% from. Bam, we had a hit, the market reversed, corrected, and now we're trying again to get back to the next price targets. So that's one extension here. So we've got extensions and we have retracements as well. The more hits you get in the same, or roughly around the same price, the more chance there is of a reversal at that price. The same thing goes in reverse. If you use these tools in reverse and look to the downside, you might get a 50% hit. Let's. This is how I can get carried away, just to try and show you how these tools work, top to low. Okay, so you had a rough 50% hit there and the market bounced from it and got a major, major reversal. So that's what we got. Anyway, moving on now. We'll make this a little bit quicker. There is the next range. It had a 50% hit, bang on. And now to the upside, there's a 1.618 clustering at 6,400 points. So far, so good. So that's a bigger time frame than this time frame. You can all see that. That's a shorter time frame. That's a longer time frame, a bigger move as well. Next one, let's layer that on. This one's a little bit shorter now. The one we just layered on was this right here. So this extension. I'll take this off so we can see. So the extension right here has had a 1.618 hit. Nice reversal. And then we are looking towards roughly around 5,800 points. Now, there are a few other prices in here, but of course, the video is already long enough, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on those for now. The main one I'm looking at is up here at roughly 6,400 points. You can see quite a few price targets clustering at about 6,400 points. Now, is that the end of the cycle? Who the hell knows? I don't have that crystal ball, but as you can see, there are a number of price targets to the upside that have some price clusters happening. The first is, of course, right here, what we had, 5,300 points. We've had a bit of a rejection, a correction, and now the market's attempting again. The next is about 58, and then following that's about 6,400. So if we're to see those, see the market get to that, then I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin also stalled around those prices. So we'd have to see where Bitcoin gets to when the S&P 500 also gets to meet its price targets. So that's it for the S&P for now. We've got two in mind, 58, 64. Let's move on to the Nasdaq. Now I've got these open so we know what's going on so far. I've got larger time frames here just to have a look at some of those major hits that have just occurred. Then we can see the magnitude of these moves. So this entire run of about 11 years projected again to the upside gave us the top that just occurred. So the Nasdaq repeated this exact range from 2008 to 2020, projected from that high. That's a 100% move of this range, and hit that just in the last couple of months. So 18,500 points, had a correction. Now it's attempting to break through that again. To the upside, 2.618, about 23,900. So a round number, let's call it 24,000. And let's throw on a couple of shorter term time frames as well. We're using this range projected there, a little hit at 50%. The 100% is at 19.7, and not too many that come together closely with 24, but you've got one at 25 and one at 22.5. Let's have a look at this one here. You're starting to get a bit of a cluster in the 19,000, so 19,500, and one more to add to that. You're getting it again here at about 23,900. So they're the next ones that I'm looking for the NASDAQ to then layer up with BTC to see if you start to get some sort of rejection at those prices sometime 2024, 2025, maybe 2026. We still have a long time to go here, and see what happens to Bitcoin at those times. So the first number you want to have a look at, keep it in your diaries, 19.5 to about 19.7. You can see three numbers lining up pretty well in the 19,000s, and then we move up to roughly around the 23,900. Yes, there are a few other numbers lower here, so we'll keep an eye on those, but they might just be shorter term corrections on the way before we get a longer term at the more major numbers. That's all it's referring to here. So that's a bit of a time projection for the Nasdaq. Still unsure if the market could go higher. Take the UK as an example, a big economic powerhouse of the world, not like in its heyday, but it's still up there in the top 10. The UK stock market, new all-time highs this week and new all-time high daily closing prices of all time, the entire history. Prices. We've gone through each of the markets themselves. Prices for BTC. Let's turn a few of these off so we can get a bit of an idea. And overall, I'm going to say when it comes to the extensions on Bitcoin, it's a little harder to use because of the nature of Bitcoin going into these big moves to the upside. So in the past, these extensions haven't been the greatest tool to use because the moves are just so significant compared to, say, the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq. However, as more money comes into the system, you see less and less, the volatility declines to the upside and to the downside. So with that in mind, let's see if we've got a few numbers to use here for BTC. The previous cycle, low to high, you got the 50% through the middle. That came out about 36. It happened to put in a low last time and bounce, and then basically broke down from there. And then on this move out, we saw a little pause there in October, and then it decided to break through. So I think this range is relatively okay to use for now. And we've seen again a test at this top. I don't think the cycle's over by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm just going to look to the upside targets. And the first one there is 135,000. We'll just use some easy round numbers here. Now, if it was to do twice this particular move, so that range for quick maths is about $65,000. So you're just projecting 65 grand off the top, takes you to about that, 135K, project 65 grand again, that'll take you to about $201,000. So that might not be enough for some people. Some people think 500 or a million. I'm going to keep it relatively conservative and of course adjust with the market itself. Now there is one other major tool, you might guess it, that I would use when it comes to trying to forecast the ends of the cycle. 50% is fantastic, but the Gann swing indicator, this is going to help with the end of the cycle. When you see these major moves break down, then you definitely know that almost definitely that part of the move is over and that we shouldn't be trying to load up on shit like altcoins, that there's probably a lot longer to go for the consolidation. So that's something really important that I would continue to use as this market progresses. You can see these nice, beautiful swings, and that's how we identify the projections using the trend-based fib extension. So I'm going to turn this one off and then have a look at the extension that we have now from the current range with the current low. If the low happens to remain at 56K, 56.5, if this low changes, May pumps up and then comes back down, then you'd have to adjust this to wherever that price comes in. But for now, this is the current price that we have, which is why I said at the beginning of the video, these prices will change. So that's a guarantee. These things will change because the market changes. If this low comes in a little lower, we have to adjust. So to the upside, the 50% level, that's the next big one I'm looking at apart from the current top. So the current top's at 73.5, 74 grand. The 50% level, so 50% of this range projected from this low takes us to $81,000. So that has been a number that we've looked at before. It remains to be a pretty significant number for Bitcoin to get through should we break to a new all-time high. And maybe the price does enough just to fool the majority most of the time. That's essentially an old saying that happens in the market. So we'll have to pay attention to that as well. Let's turn on another one. So a bigger price range here and see whether we get any hits for price to come in together. Okay, let's turn this one on right here. Now, this one is the entire range of the previous cycle, low to high, projected off the current cycle low. So a very, very significant range. Now we have had a hit. Wow. At 50%, $48,500. That was our ETF top there at 49. So nice hit there, pullbacks, and then we got a breakout. Now to the upside of that, 100% comes in almost dead on the same 50% level. So we're getting a price cluster now at $81,000. We've got to stretch this to try and see the prices. It's so close. The first one's 80,800. The next one's 81,300. So really close prices there. That's why I've got a pretty strong eye on 81,000 to see how Bitcoin reacts. But is it the end of the cycle price? It is possible. I don't know for sure, but that's why I'm definitely keeping an eye on that 81,000. There's enough there for me to pay attention to the price when it gets to that point, around that 81,000. Possible. There's no guarantees, okay? Let's look to the upside again. 150% of the range comes in at 114,000, and 150% of this range here projected from that low comes in at 130,000 during the next 1 to 2 years of the end of the 18.6 year cycle. This is the big movie, the big story that I've been very interested in. I have dedicated myself to this for the last decade or more when it comes to looking at this cycle and obviously investing for 17 years now. So this is what I'm fully invested in. I hope you're here to join us on the journey to see how this next 20, 18-year cycle plays out, and then we can add that to the history books together. Subscribe, join us for the journey, and like the content. And guys, catch you at the next one. Till then.